Hello, CSL Chico. It's so wonderful to be back with you in the same time zone. It feels like it's been forever, but even though it's been almost 2 years, I know that we're all in the perfect right place where we need to be at the perfect right time. The title of my talk is Trusting the Universe as it reveals many expressions of the One. I love this image because it kind of radiates out like a heart and explodes into a multitude of different expressions of light. And that's what I think that we've all been doing. We are all coming from the center of love, a glowing being light, and becoming more of who we really are. I'm going to first begin by sharing a quote from Matthew Fox, who was kind of a rebel priest, and he was expelled from the Catholic Church in the early 90s. He says, "Every faith tradition offers an image of a sacred web into which we are woven. We are the glittering jewels at each intersection of the net, reflecting all the other jewels. Through the threads, we reach each other, passing information across the expanses of space." So when I began my journey, I got to see all these amazing jewels in the form of places that people worshiped. The first one was in Copenhagen, Denmark, this 19th century Anglican church that stood proudly on the riverside. And then in southern India, I got to see this beautiful temple where people would come and be connected by this thread of belief systems, this thread of worship that was a common theme throughout the world religions that I saw. I also saw this place of focus called the Matrimandir in southern India, where people would come and meditate with this beautiful light that shone down through the top of this dome and reflected down through the entire building. And in northern Thailand, I got to see once again the jewel of beauty and wisdom through this crumbling Buddhist temple that still had this incredible energy to it with the little Buddha statue inside. At this mosque in southern Thailand, I appreciated the domes and the people that would go there religiously 3 times a day. And I just honored their participation with their faith system. And then, of course, there was something called the Chinese temple, which was a potpourri of every world religion crammed in together in one tourist spot in southern Thailand. It was quite unique and a little on the gaudy side, and I guess you could spell that any way you like. I looked for a CSL emblem there, but couldn't find one, so I'll have to take one back when I go there again. Now, in southern India, when I first arrived, I saw this mural on the wall. Plan B, be yourself. There's no plan A. I realized that I had to be my authentic self and not worry about what other birds thought of how I hung on my own branch, because we each have our own way of doing things. And so as I traveled through the world, I had to cast off some of the fears that had been projected upon me as a woman traveling on her own, or, coming with this unique philosophy that was not quite familiar to other people, but I had my own unique vision that I wanted to share. Diane Harmony says, "Faith is a spiritual conviction that what we know has greater power than any apparent material appearance and or resistance. Thus, in faith, we can surrender into the vision of our I am and know at the deepest level of our being that it is the Father, Mother, God within us that does the work." So how are you expressing your I am self? How do you answer that? I am what? In southern India, I saw these Hindu men being their I amness in a little silly way as they went down to the water to cleanse themselves. I also saw this inner I am curious come out with these Hindu women who were more curious about me than I think I was about them. I saw this little boy who reminded me that we all are marching to our own drumbeat. And the people who would once again go down to these temple waters and cleanse themselves and just go through a ritual that allowed them to feel this connection with the divine, the jewels that were everywhere in southern India, reflecting through the Hindu temples and the people who were so brightly colored as they came on their pilgrimages to worship. I also saw jewels in these wonderful women who came to learn English as well as skills at a school that I taught. And while I taught them English, I also speckled in all these affirmations of being a powerful woman, as many of them needed to move beyond their current living situations. And I admire their determination and their desire to improve their lives. I saw the I amness in small children that love to play, and also in big children who equally love to play. I also found a connection with this family who shared this little bungalow, or this, what was it? A little shelter during a huge monsoon in southern India. And in the time we spent together, it was a beautiful connection that we're all human. We all don't want to get drenched, and we all want the best for our families. Black Elk said, "While I stood there, I saw more than I can tell and understood more than I saw. For I was seeing in a sacred manner the shapes of all things in the spirit and the shape of all shapes, as they must all live together as one being." What wise words that still apply today as we come and realize that there are many shapes, but all stem from this one being. I love the symbols of the mandalas that I saw throughout India and Thailand. Here, out of one central focus, each person expands out the light, bringing it in a new direction. When I went to Thailand, which was quite a profound experience because I was guided to go there before I had heard anything about COVID, but an inner voice just said I needed to leave India early and go on to Thailand. So I did. I followed this guidance, and it turned out to be so significant because once I got to Thailand, I was more free to move about on this island that was open, that was secluded enough that we didn't have to worry about COVID so much, and we were able to make connections. Christian Sorensen says, "When you live in alignment with your soul, loving who you truly are, you will bring your realization back into the oneness with people, the planet, and the universe. You'll live knowing an internal peace and be a loving difference maker on the planet." I was very touched by this because I was able to go out and see and meet these different difference makers who were wanting to add to society as a whole. Like these people in northern Chiang Mai who came together from many different countries at the beginning of 2021 after we had gone through lockdown to share one common message about humanity. I saw difference makers in these two young Thai people who were so helpful to me and became instrumental in getting me to be where I needed to be. And it was also this trusting that I was meeting the right people for the right experiences. I was delighted to see these young Thai women and doing their incredible traditional Thai dance down by the southern border. And they were just so radiant that they reminded me that this unique expression shows up in beautiful, innocent forms. Christian Sorensen once again says, "When aligning with the mystical and living from the mountaintop, the fight along the false fault lines of division like race, politics, and income brackets stops naturally. There's equality for all, not just for those you're in sympathetic agreement with. Celebrate diversity of perception and lifestyles by embracing the differences of others." Are you ever just in sympathetic agreement with somebody? Those people that you want to help that look like you or believe like you, but you don't want to reach out to maybe somebody a little different? Embracing the differences of others also means being respectful of how they're showing up in their unique form of the one. I was very saddened when I was in Thailand during this time, and I was listening to reports back home of all the attacks on the Asian Americans. In fact, one of them was the aunt of a dear friend of mine, a doctor who had helped me in numerous ways during my time on the island. And so to hear that her aunt had been attacked by a baseball bat by a young man who ran away deeply troubled me, because I knew that here in her country, they were extending such kindness to me. And yet in my country, that was not reciprocated. So I realized that we have to seek that commonality that we all share. Here, bring your daughter to work day might look a little different, but every day for some people is bring your daughter to work day. And that young people have the same hopes and aspirations after they graduate from university as many people around the world do. The universe will guide you to the perfect connections. Here, I found people who would show up and help me clean up the beaches. We had Mindfulness Mondays where we would walk along, talk, watch the sunset, and pick up trash along the beach. Stay open to new friends. I was able to interact on a deeper level with this little boat ride that we took across the bay, and have some incredible bonds with these people who were from Turkey and Spain and Germany. And they ended up coming to my workshops and classes. I also found a wonderful connection with this Muslim woman who we were able to interact and share a deep understanding, even though we didn't always speak the same language. But she had the best ice cream around. And so I was a very attentive guest who would come quite often to visit her. Find treasures in the middle of mud. This little girl bravely held up her shell that I could tell she was just a little bit frightened of. And yet she gave me this gift of being this treasure, as she couldn't speak my language, but she was reaching out to the stranger that she wanted to connect with. The entire world revolves in your mind. This was nailed to a Buddhist temple tree. And I was touched by how, like the little girl with her slight fear over the shell. And I thought, how often do I become overly frightened by exaggerated worries that I create? Things that never come to fruition, but I create an entire world of fear in my mind about an event. Don't let the illusions keep you in a state of fear and stop you from moving through the open door. What are your painted dragons that are paralyzing you from walking through an open entrance? Are they fears of doubt, not enoughness, or just made up fears that have no place in your world anymore? Maybe you should be like this little boy who just picks up his lifesaver and heads out to where he wants to be. One day as I was feeling a little bit sad, because we all can get lonely, I was walking along the bay that had drained out of the water that day, and I knew I had to trust spirit to send comforting beings as you journey along. You are never truly alone. I heard a noise behind me, and these three beautiful birds were flying right at me. They landed on me, and at first I thought they were there to greet me, to be my friend, but I realized that they were trying to free my bird-shaped earrings dangling from my lobe. It's okay. I got over it. The universe reveals itself everywhere and in everything. I think it's important that when we are feeling alone and disconnected, that we remember to go out in nature. Just walking in the jungle, I would see light entering through every fiber and plant and expressing this beautiful connection that the jungles create. And now that I've been back in Bidwell Park, walking through the park and seeing where you can't really tell where one tree ends and another begins, because they seem to be all one of this beautiful growth that's occurring. I found this mantra for me nailed on this cafe tree in Thailand. And it says, when I think about the world where I was born, feeling caught up in a system, a constant running around, the so-called security with the restlessness in the eyes, the people who made it, but their dreams that died. And almost everything is possessed by possession. Almost everything is about nothing. It is love that can make it worthwhile. It can touch the heart and break down the wall. Focus on the beauty that has been there all along, and state it instead of fixating on things that bring the feeling down. Life can be so much more than fix, convince, control. So loosen up, quiet the mind, and have some fun. So do you feel that there's a restlessness in your eyes? You're kind of letting your dreams die? Maybe it's time to loosen up and have some fun in life. I was admiring the fishermen that would go out in the mornings to the sunrise, come in at sunset, and live life in a simple way. Like the people who lived in bungalows along the beach. They were lightening up, letting go of many items and living more simply. Or people who did workshops and buildings without walls and just connecting to those natural environments around them. Are you stuck in your life? Do you feel like you aren't able to move for whatever reasons? Ernest Holmes says, as you learn to release all your burdens to the right action of God, you will find that everything falls into its proper place. You let your problems slip away from you, realizing that a power greater than you are and a presence that is within you is already willing and able to guide you in all ways. So think about that. Trusting the universe to guide you. And that's one theme that I've had for the last 2 years in my journey of knowing that I am guided at the right place at the right time to where I need to be. So you don't have to be stuck. Whatever's going on in your world, what are your options? You can take another step. One day I came to this temple called the Tiger Temple, and it was only 1,260 steps to the very top. Well, at first I was overwhelmed. It was hot and humid, and there was a barrage of monkeys that were they were kleptomaniacs. Let's just call it what it was. And so I felt like I wasn't going to be able to make it to the top. But all I had to do was put one foot in front of the other, take one step in the direction that I wanted to go. And eventually I made it to the top with my possessions intact, I might add. What growth and change are you being guided to? With more of the storm clouds of COVID on the horizon now, we have an opportunity to grow into a new direction. Are you following that inner guide that's directing you to it? I was impressed by these hotel owners and workers who were moving back to open their hotels again after COVID. And they wanted to learn English, which I got to teach them, as well as share how to green or environmentally improve their hotel businesses to make it more friendly to the earth. I was also impressed with this young man who, after being a fisherman on a boat for 20 years, his arm was ripped open by an anchor, and he began again making the best pizza. He had his dough in front of him, and he shared the secrets of his sauce with pride and conviction. Trust the universe to transform obstacles into your pillars of strength. Things that might seem like they're blocking your way might be there just to help support and protect you. And also know that your path might not be a straight, direct one, but eventually it will allow you to bloom. Those who flow as life flows know they need no other force. Lao Tzu spoke those words hundreds of years ago, and they're still true now, that if we let go and flow, we will be guided ultimately to this one central place, this one place of connection. And when we don't just fight with our fears, as I started to do toward the end of April this last year, when COVID cases in Thailand began to be on the rise once again. And I felt like I was kind of running across bridges that were collapsing as soon as I walked over them. I saw the numbers, as I said, coming to a peak. And on the day that I flew out of Thailand, on April 27th, was the day that much of Thailand began to close down. So I knew that I was guided and protected. A statement from the CSL Global Vision says, "We envision humanity awakening to its spiritual magnificence and discovering the creative power of thought, a world where each and every person discovers his, her, their own personal power and ability to create an individual life that works within a world that works for everyone." So I envision a world where we are all unique, divine expressions of spirit, radiating out from this oneness, this one planet that we all share. Thank you so much for listening. Namaste, Sawadee-ka. And I hope you'll join us afterwards for the chat so I can share more details of my journey.